Michael, you and Sochi built Bebo and did a phenomenal job with it. What were some of the things that you got right in that process to get such a great exit and build such a great business?
I don't know. I mean, surviving was the one thing that had we done things differently, we probably wouldn't have survived long enough to have success. So I think doing everything on a low budget and doing it yourself is a great way for a new entrepreneur to start, as I mentioned earlier. I don't know. I mean, there's certainly things I'd do differently. And, you know, as successful as Bebo was, we ultimately actually lost. We didn't win. We sold it because we were not going to win. Facebook won social networking. It just happened to be such a big space that you could be number 2 or 3 and still exit for a lot of money. So, I don't know. Did I answer your question? Probably not.
No, I think it was well answered. Just on that point, Facebook was always going to win. That's interesting because Bebo still has millions of raving fans, and on TechCrunch blog, for example, Roby NNNN.
Roby, yeah.
You have heard of her. On April 9th, excuse the grammar, it's not great, but it's not bad. This year, April 9th this year, wrote, Bebo is amazing. You get to write about yourself, make apps, and etc., and make your own skin. On Facebook, it's just a pile of games. When I go onto Facebook, it's just boring, but if I go onto Bebo, it's fun. I get to talk to friends and so on. So let's say it again, and this is in caps. Leave Facebook and come back to Bebo. I could go on all day about Bebo. I did check to see if there was a Roby NNNN Birch in the family, and there wasn't. So
No,
obviously,
no.
And I could go on and on about this. There's a lot on there. Claire, on April 9th, Bebo is way better than Facebook. There's just nothing to do on Facebook. Most people go onto Facebook to play Farmville. So you know, you had users that loved it. You could personalize skins. You could use Nike branded skins. You could do all of these things, and you didn't bombard users on their profile page with advertising. So why, after you left, did Facebook get such a market share from Bebo?
I think Facebook is just a big wrapper for Farmville, ultimately. But, you know. I mean, it was winning prior to us selling, which is kind of why we sold. We were being flat for 6 months prior to selling. And it wasn't for lack of trying to grow. It was just evident that we'd done that. And we've had spectacular growth for a long time, and then we'd gone flat. And I wasn't confident that I could get it to grow again. And Facebook were, since their inception, really had pretty much straight line growth. I mean, they've been as steady as anything I've seen in terms of growth. And we'd become a very young demographic on Bebo, and it was kind of skewing younger over time. And I think part of the problem, and this is kind of ironic, is that we were reasonably open. When you registered, you were private by default, because we didn't want to suddenly expose you to the world. But then most people would actually, in reality, opt into making it open. And then you could see anyone else who was open and comment on their profile, and it became this quite open network. And that had a problem because people would interact with other people that maybe they didn't really know that well. And it sort of started becoming young, so the older people got put off. So then it became even younger, and then that put even people only slightly older off. And it just ended up becoming this teenage network, which wasn't something we were trying to do. I actually designed it as a tool that I would find useful. Obviously, I'm either very childish or just got it wrong. And it became very popular with teenagers. So we'd become ultimately a niche social network, which wasn't the intent. We wanted to be a generic social network. And Facebook, because it had been, I feel, a closed network, and ironically they're now becoming open, had this thing where when you logged in, the whole world that you saw on Facebook was your friends. So by definition, it was people like you. And everyone felt at home, whether you were a teenager or a grandmother. You went in and you felt comfortable in that environment. And we were trying to be too many different things in one big open environment. And so I think we just kind of, we'd lost our initial mission, and it's really hard to turn a community around once it's taken a certain direction. I often draw analogies with bars. You know, if you go into a bar and it's a wine bar, and you don't like wine bars, you're not going to go in it. And so that initial community kind of defines what type of community it is. And then if it starts taking a certain turn, it starts becoming a dive bar. Although it was a dive bar, but it's very hard to make it a classy bar again. You know, it just gets defined by its clientele. And so we kind of got in this trap.
Okay. So there's a shifting demographic that caused the problem fundamentally.
I think potentially, yeah. And you know, our initial vision for Bebo was to be the product quality and utility experience of Facebook, but with the kind of fun and self-expression of MySpace. We wanted to be something in between, hoping that it would be better than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
And I think we succeeded in that to some degree, and I think maybe the thing we went wrong on was just being too open. We should have forced it to be friends only.
Right. Okay. So do you think there's still an opportunity for a new entrant to, as you said, hit that middle ground between the sort of the functionality of Facebook in terms of you can't change skins and that type of thing, and the playfulness and music of MySpace?
Possibly. It's just that much harder now to get a foothold in it.
Yeah.
I mean, we grew much more quickly in the UK than America, and that's, I think, because MySpace and increasingly Facebook at the time were so entrenched in America that we couldn't get a foothold. And I think anyone launching any sort of social network, generic social network now, trying to get a foothold is going to be quite difficult. I think Twitter succeeded because it was so different. It wasn't trying to be, Bebo was too similar. It was sort of between those two.
Right.
And Twitter was so different that they managed. So I think the only way of really doing it now is to be fundamentally quite different.
Yeah, yeah. So because, as you said, Bebo was so interlinked with that demographic shift downwards, is that the reason why you decided not to buy it? Because, as you know, you sold it for $850 million. It just got sold to Criterion for $10 million. So you weren't tempted to?
We thought about it briefly, but it was, and I think it is an absolute bargain at 10 million.
Yeah.
And I believe it sold for less than 10 million.
Yeah.
But it just felt like a step back, and I wanted to do something new and original. So we'd already had a number of ideas, and we're doing political networking as opposed to social networking. So it's sort of somewhat a related field, a little more serious than what we were doing with Bebo. But I just kind of more excited about looking forward rather than what I felt would have been going backwards.
So I know you still care about the Bebo brand. So this isn't a free consultation for Criterion, but what advice would you give to them in order to get Bebo back up the value chain?
Well, I do actually know that I met the new owners because they're one block away from our office. So, so I'm sort of starting to speak to them and find out what they're planning on doing, because it's kind of fun to be tangentially part of it without owning it. I think the opportunity is to try and embrace the one thing that it was, which was a kind of young social network. Whereas we were to some degree fighting it, at the end we sort of embraced it. I think if you just embrace that and cater entirely towards that demographic, there is an opportunity, because it already has that foothold, to create something between MySpace and Facebook for that demographic of kind of teens from 13 to probably 18, and just be really good at that and cater to them. I mean, people do find Facebook a little boring at times. It is a quite dry experience, so I don't think it's for everyone.
It's interesting because Business Week says the price AOL paid for Bebo included $766 million of goodwill. So goodwill, obviously part of that is branded. What advice?
I never know what goodwill means.
I don't quite. That's what I'm actually asking you. What is goodwill? We should go on an MBA. But assuming part of that is brand and the other brilliant stuff that you probably programmed, what's the art of building a phenomenal global brand in this digital era?
I think it's just focusing on building a great product. I think the brand follows the product. I mean, the better the user experience is, the more committed and you can get the user base, the more crazy they are saying that your product's better than the other sites. They certainly take a great sense of ownership, especially in social networking sites. I mean, as you mentioned, there was a couple of references there. I mean, there is a core base of incredibly dedicated and loyal, quite a big core base of dedicated and loyal Bebo fans. And if you can just grow that and feed off that and get more and more of that, then the brand kind of follows. I'm certainly not a great brand builder. That's not my kind of thing. I wouldn't consider myself a branding guy. I just like to try and build good technology products.
Do you think you got a good price for Bebo?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.